In this video, we're going to be taking a look at linear equations, and instead of graphing them by finding the slope of the y-intercept, we're going to graph these guys just by using their intercepts. And one of the neat things we need to remember is that for every x-intercept, we already know that the y-coordinate is 0. Because if you talk about any point that's on the x-axis, the y-coordinate is 0. If the y value is not 0, that means you would either be above or below the x-axis. And if you're above or below it, you can't be on it, which means you couldn't be an x-intercept. And for every y-intercept, it's going to be similar to what we saw for finding the slope. Every y-intercept is going to start off by being 0, comma, something. And if you start with that, you're already halfway there. Alright, so for the first one, trying to find the x-intercept means that y is 0. So if we just kind of cover that up, if I just pretend that this guy is not here, then you end up with 3x equals 9, which means that x equals 3. So very quickly you can get the x-intercept as the ordered pair 3, 0. And then we look at the y-intercept. So for the y-intercept, x is 0, so you cover that up, and you see the equation that says that 2y equals 9. Divide both sides by 2, and y equals 9 halves. Now, for some reason, a lot of students have issues and they struggle with fractions. This is an improper fraction. So you could either convert this to a decimal, but you could also write this as a mixed number. 2 goes into 9 4 times with a remainder of 1, so you would have 4.5, which makes a lot more sense when it comes to graphing than using 9 halves. What you need to understand here, though, is that you have found 2 points for your line. You haven't talked about finding the slope, you're just talking about finding 2 points for your line. So, let's plot these guys and see what we have. So the x-intercept always goes on the x-axis, and the y-intercept goes on the y-axis. So the x-intercept is 3, 0, and the y-intercept is 0, 4.5. So it's going to be right about here, halfway between 4 and 5. Now, if you saw some of the other videos, you know that just having 2 points is not good enough. I want to have more points. I want to have a very accurate line. Well, it might be kind of tough. Here's what we can do. Even though the problem wasn't asking us to do this, we can find the slope. How do we find the slope? Well, you just need to take the equation and solve this for y. And when you solve it for y, you'll be putting it in slope-intercept form. You can find the slope, and you can use the slope to get extra points. Now, normally I wouldn't worry about doing that, but since you've got this little halvesies guy right here, he's going to be kind of problematic for us. So when I solve this for y, I need to subtract 3x and move it to the other side. And then we finish getting y by itself by dividing everything by 2. All right, so we have y equals negative 3 halves x plus 9 halves. Now you can't really be shocked at the 9 halves right there, because that's what we had for the y-intercept, right? And as we saw with the video for slope and y-intercept, this constant directly correlates to the y-intercept. But what was important for me in solving this guy for y is that I now have my slope. Okay? Remember, the slope is just the coefficient. It doesn't actually include the x, it's just the number in front of the x. So knowing that my slope now is negative 3 halves, I can use that to get additional points. So I could start here, and using my slope, I can go down 3 to the right 2, down 3 to the right 2, and so on. So I get a lot of extra points, which is going to really help me line up my straight edge for graphing my line. Well, we went to the right, let's go back to the left. So instead of going down 3 to the right 2, let's go up 3 to the left 2, up 3 to the left 2, and so on. Now you'll see that I didn't actually land on the y-intercept. I kind of skipped it. But I hope you'll see that this y-intercept is the midpoint between these two guys right here. So everything lines up on the same line. Take our straight edge, line it up, connect the dots, make sure you go from edge to edge of the graphing window, and everybody's going to be happy. Make sure you take time to identify and label points. So this is the ordered pair 1, 3. There's 3, 0, 5, negative 3, and 7, negative 6. And you'll kind of see a pattern here that will connect to your slope. Notice that your x coordinates go 1, plus 2 is 3, plus 2 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So you keep adding 2 every time to the x. Well, that's that denominator, right? Look at your y coordinate. 3, minus 3 is 0, minus 3 is negative 3, minus 3 is negative 6. So you saw that your x is gaining 2, your y is losing 3. So your y is losing 3, that's the negative 3, and your x is gaining 2. That's your denominator. That's how it all connects with the slope-intercept form, with the slope. All right, let's do one more. Let's look at 2x minus 7y equals negative 14. If the question is asking for your intercepts, you're already halfway there, because you know that for every x-intercept, y is 0. For every y-intercept, x is 0. So you can just go ahead and start there. Start right at the very beginning doing that. And knowing that those guys are zeros, we can do this little cover-up game like I was showing you before. So to find the x-intercept, y is going to be 0, so just cover that guy up. And if y is 0, we have that 2x equals negative 14, divided by 2, so x equals negative 7. So very quickly, we get the x-intercept, not even needing a calculator or anything fancy like that. For the y-intercept, that means x is 0, so you cover up the x term, and you translate what you see. So that now says negative 7y equals negative 14. Divide both sides by negative 7, and y equals positive 2. So there we go. So very quickly we have two ordered pairs, we have 2 points, and 2 points will uniquely determine the line. So let's use those guys, let's plot them and see what we have. Alright, so every x-intercept goes on the x-axis, so that says negative 7, 0, that's over here. The y-intercept goes on the y-axis, that's 0, positive 2, which goes right here. Alright, to get extra points, we've got a couple of options. One option is that we can solve this equation for y, putting it in slope-intercept form, and then identifying the slope. Or we can identify the slope just by what we see. As we go from this point to this point, talk about and identify what that rise to run is. So your slope, which is your rise to run, let's see. We go up 2 units, so that's up 2. We go to the right, count it out, 7 units. So by looking at the picture, we can identify the slope, up 2 over 7. So we can do that again, up 2 over 7, and you can get an extra point just like that. Alright, so let's connect these dots. Remember, you're going from edge to edge of the graphing window. Make sure you put arrows on the ends to signify that it goes on forever in both directions. And identify and label your points. So there's negative 7, 0, 0, 2, and 7, 4. Now, there are some questions that you may come across in my math lab, and they will ask you to find the x and y-intercepts, no problem, but then they're going to ask you to graph by using those intercepts. Now what that means is that you can't plot this point and then use the slope and go up 2 over 7 and plot that point. If you do, even though your graph will be right, my math will count it wrong because you didn't do what it asked you to do. So if you ever see the question that says graph using the intercepts, that means you need to use the x and the y-intercept as your 2 points to graph your line, right? And that's all there is to this. So make sure you read the instructions so you know whether you're looking for the slope or if you're looking for the intercepts. And also make sure you draw from edge to edge of your graphing window. Put arrows on the ends, and make sure that you do label your points.